Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'd like to open this public session of this meeting of the Bristol-Warren Regional School Committee. It is Monday, April 22nd, and it is just after 6 p.m. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please, can I have a motion to seal the executive session minutes from this evening?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. I have two people who've signed up for public comment. Just a respectful reminder that all public comment is 3 minutes. The first person, I believe, this is the order I was handed the pages, is Corey Santerre. Corey, can you just say your name and your address when you get to the podium, please? Thank you.
Corey Santerre.
I live at. Pick that
can
up.
lift
You don't
it up.
have to leave me.
All right, great.
No, it's
Corey Santerre. I live at 2 Fairmount Ave in Bristol. Okay, so I typed this out so I don't fumble over everything. But good evening, everyone. I'd like to use this time to address an issue in the district in regards to there being no policy in place to protect the coaches in regards to due process when it comes to termination. No review amongst the panel, nothing. Now, I know each and every school committee member got involved to try and make a difference in our children's school experience. Just like coaches who make minimal pay to bring not the wins or losses, but life experiences as to show players the importance of teamwork, dedication, and a drive to become better individuals. As you probably come across in your own job, there are critics. I've read people criticizing the committee in the local paper. Now imagine that one person, let's say an angry grandparent, called for your job, and one person had the power to just fire you without you having your day to defend yourself. Is that right? Now put yourself in that position. Recently, my son's now former head baseball coach, Frank Duvall, was told he was relieved of his duties as he pulled up to practice by the athletic director. This order came from the superintendent on advice of counsel. Players and parents were upset and set up a meeting with the AD to express our frustration as the players were in unison as to how much they respected and loved playing for Coach Duvall over a short period of time. The man who was an administrator and an accomplished coach in our district in East Providence for 28 years wasn't even granted a meeting with the superintendent until 6 days after he was terminated. But the decision had already been made. No right to defend himself and not even shown what he was actually terminated for. A student or parent can essentially slander a good man's name, take away something he truly loves without the due process these coaches and role models deserve. What I ask for are 5 steps to be put into effect for complaints. 1, speak with the coach first. 2nd, meet with the athletic director. 3rd, the athletic director meets with the coach to go over concerns. 4, if an investigation is needed, meeting with the superintendent should be arranged and coach made aware of any investigation. And 5, a panel is in place to discuss the solution to the problem with all parties involved present. Now, myself personally would like to thank all the coaches of the district for making our kids better people. Your dedication is appreciated by 99.5% of the parents and players you coach. And I ask the committee to stop letting the 0.5% spoiled brats to have the final say.
we're finding that it's not as easy as we had hoped, still addressing chronic to stay the course in meeting our achievement goals and working with principals, achievement coaches, and coordinators to provide teachers and students with the most support possible. I'm going to start with a presentation of the district. Let's see if I can get this correct. So these are the district assessment results. What you see on the slide is at the top right corner. We have the state assessment results from the end of last year. Those were last spring's results. And you can see the gains that were made from the prior year. Down below that, on the left, what we've shared with you is a comparison of throughout the year, and also the comparison to the state assessment results. At the bottom left, we have the results for this year. We have finished our mid-year assessment, so that's what you see on the screen, and then we'll do our end-of-year assessment, obviously at the end of the year. So what's important to notice, or what we're encouraged by, is if you look at ELA, middle of the year, we are at the same point that we were at the end of year last year. So we feel that we're making gains, the indicators are strong, and again, it's not everything that we would like to see, but we are making progress and we're proud of the work that is going on. Oh, I went too far, excuse me. So at the district level, these are some of the strategies that we have in place. We've really been focusing a lot of time and energy on our MTSS structure, that's the multi-tiered systems of support. And we have a district core design team that's doing that work. We have MTSS leaders in each school that are doing that work alongside of us. We put a big emphasis on Tier 1, which is the first best instruction that students receive in math and ELA, making sure that our schedules allow sufficient time for instruction and for intervention, making sure that all of our teachers have access to the best resources for those extra small group supplemental learning that's happening in the classrooms. And it's a big learning curve for everyone, so I really appreciate the work of our teachers, working with our coaches to put all of this in place. And then also we are providing additional resources and support for our special education teachers and our MLL teachers so that they can continue to close that gap for learners. And also I just want to do a shout out that we are so proud that by the end of the year we will have trained 95% of all educators in Bristol Warren in science of reading and structured literacy. We're already beginning to see the impact of that, especially at the younger grades, and it's really given us a shared vision across the district as to what great literacy learning looks like. And I want to congratulate and thank everyone for a commitment to that work. For our elementary teachers, it was a 2-year endeavor, and to Mary Cabral to organize all of those trainings. So that's a big part of what we've been doing to continue to promote achievement. So next I'm going to turn it over to the schools, and we'll begin with Colt Andrews.
Good evening, everyone. So, which one am I pressing, Diana? Okay, this one? Okay. So this is our Colt Andrews spring assessment data in the upper right-hand corner. As you can see, in ELA, we had a 7% increase. In math, we had a 12% increase. And our science assessment went up 15%. So that was our increases for that. Our local assessment, iReady ELA, for 22-23 was 63%. Our iReady math was 57%. ELA, 41% and 26%. So we're hoping for an increase in the 41% and 26% to get 75% in 5 years. So our Colt Andrews improvement strategies. I have 5 areas that we'd like to improve upon. MTSS, to continue to strengthen the MTSS process with a focus on research-based interventions for social, emotional, and behavioral support, along with progress monitoring tools. We're well on our way with ELA and reading and math, but we need to really focus in on social, emotional, and behaviors next year. Student attendance, I continue to focus on utilizing the Bristol Warren Regional School District tiers of intervention for reducing chronic absenteeism, aimed at improving school-wide attendance. I continue to strengthen the work with families, community outreach, and to improve daily attendance and reduce chronic absenteeism. Our grade level common teacher time, continue to focus on our CTT, our dedicated CTT, with our literacy and math coaches to focus on data and instruction in ELA and math to increase proficiency to 75%. iReady acceleration blocks in ELA and math. We have a robust program going with our acceleration blocks. We want to continue to increase the student differentiation based on data to personalize instruction during these blocks. And lastly, student engagement, provide PD opportunities for staff to delve into specific grade level curricula and lessons to implement strategies, best practices, and or condense less engaging aspects of the curriculum with our goal to accelerate learning. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Gutierrez.
Good evening. At Gutierrez, we are growing, and as our comparison data of our local assessments from last year to this year, the science of reading and all of our work with our new HMH program, which we've had for about 3 years now, is really starting to shine. And so moving with the action steps that I'm going to speak to is I'd like to really develop how we need to now spend a little more time professional development with our mathematics, because at this present point in the year, I can see that we're shining stronger at this moment in our English language arts, which we have put a heavy emphasis on in these last couple of years. With the strategies to improve that we've started working with this year and that we need to strengthen for next year is culture and climate. We worked diligently as a team at Gutierrez to strengthen our Tier 1 school-wide behavior expectations. This year we have a school-wide pledge that is said after the United States pledge, and that students are recognized on a monthly basis if they show that they're being safe, respectful, and responsible, so that we are all owning the tenets of Gutierrez School. Acceleration block has been something that we've been working on for a couple of years, and now we're going to have access to a scheduling tool. So I'll be able to rethink and reallocate the staff within my building to have all hands on deck during that acceleration block, to be able to really use the professionals that are in my building. And I'm hoping that the new scheduling tool will help me streamline that process. As I mentioned earlier, math proficiency increase with professional development. We really want to elevate the learning of mathematics. And we have a high quality curriculum, but how do we have the fidelity and increase our hands-on experiences and increase the engagement of mathematics? During COVID, we took away anything that we could touch. So we had mathematics manipulatives was not common practice because we were during COVID time. So now we have to re-excite and use all the things that we already have in our buildings and in our toolbox to strengthen the mathematics instruction. With that, the Tier 2 instruction really helps us close the gaps. And so with professional development moving forward, I would like us to have, what does that look like? Closing the gaps for our Tier 2 instructional pieces. Specialized instructional resources and pedagogy of how are we working with our Tier 3 students and using all of our professionals working together collaboratively to enhance mathematics instruction. Now, as I said before, that our language arts, we've spent a few years building our HMH and the science of reading. So my focus moving forward really is to establish a strong PLC and the protocols and using the literacy coaches to strengthen that and be able to have the professional conversations, the professional learning communities of what we're doing in literacy and how can we look at student work and monitor how we are implementing our resources with fidelity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Good evening, everyone. Very happy to be here tonight. Have some good results to show and report out. One thing I want to point out is the correlation between iReady and RICAS. It's a weak correlation for Hugh Cole. I don't know why. It's the only school of the bunch where you see that. So in other words, if you take a look at 22-23 end of year, you'll see that iReady, ELA, and math were at 54% each. And in RICAS, it was 40 and 41. So it's a double-digit difference in percentage points. I can't explain it. I don't really know why that is. I'm hopeful it's just a one-year aberration because that would speak well of our current iReady results because we're holding steady from last year. And if the correlation is better and we get the same results in iReady, we'll have another set of improvement results on RICAS this current year in store for us. So that's what I'm hoping. We'll see what happens. Some of the things that we're doing to improve. Expand the scope of the GL. That's the grade level leaders that we have at Hugh Cole to aid in scheduling, morale, and professional development. The idea of expanding the reach and leadership of teachers in the building. So it's not just admin talking down to them. It's a whole Hugh Cole effort to improve every single day. Utilize a new digital scheduling tool to maximize instructional time and streamline school processes. You've heard about that already a couple of times. I'm very excited about that. Lots of things that we can do with that. We can make multiple schedules for different scenarios that might be happening during the course of the year. We can streamline school processes, as the bullet point says, get the acceleration blocks in line, get our lunch schedule up to speed, a bunch of different things that we have in mind for that. Support CTDs and professional learning activities to include LASW protocols. You might recall from my last presentation, that's looking at student work protocols. So pull together a bunch of student work, throw it down on the table, have everybody take a look at it, discuss what they see, discuss exemplars of what it could be, and what they can do going forward to improve the work that's in front of them. Also, data analysis strategies to increase cognitive complexity and fidelity to the curriculum. Fidelity to the curriculum is actually a big one. We're looking more into that this year. We are seeing a bit of a dip in some of our grade levels. That we also see a bit of a dip in the fidelity to the curriculum. So that's going to provide us with some paths forward. We did allow for some of that this year, and in some cases it seems the experiment did not pan out. So that's good to know, and we'll get back to that in a couple grade levels. What I mean by cognitive complexity, that's just Bloom's taxonomy. For those of you who are aware of that, if you think of just memorizing something as the lowest level of cognitive complexity, whereas if you're analyzing, if you're synthesizing, if you're creating, those are at the highest levels of Bloom taxonomy. So you can see that in the classroom based on the questions that are asked and the activities that the students are working on. And you can make note of that. So we have a walkthrough tool that we just started, and we're collecting data that we'll share back with teachers on a regular basis on how we're doing school-wide. Support coaching activities to maximize impact. What I mean by that is, as an admin team, we can do things when we go into a classroom that would support the specific work that the coaches are doing. So if the coaches are working on constructive response, we can go in during the time that they're actually working on constructive response and give specific feedback to teachers, then meet regularly with the coaches to find out specifically what they're doing so that there can just be encouragement and pointed conversation around the specifics of the coaching program and what we're doing going forward. Support current after-school programming and plan expansion for next school year. Apparently this was a big hallmark of Hugh Cole in the past, and I've seen some evidence of that in the past, and it really was quite something. I did, a long time ago when I worked in Providence, we had a school where we did a ton of it as well, and most of it came from the PTO, and that's exactly what's happening at Hugh Cole now. They want what they had, and so we're going to do everything we can to support them in that effort. We already have, currently we have 4 programs going on, and we want to double that next year, and we just got to figure out some of the funding issues that are coming up, but I'm very confident we'll be able to do that. And finally, to continue to monitor and improve the acceleration and intervention blocks. You know all about that. You've heard it a number of times now. It is a very key component to working with Tier 2 and Tier 3 kids at Hugh Cole and across the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
We saw some nice gains last year in our state assessments, feeling pretty positive about that with 10% and 11% increases on those assessments. We're running a few points higher at our mid-year than we were last year at our mid-year, so we hope to kind of put a big push into the end of the year and see some nice gains there as well. Some of our improvement strategies, similar to what others have said, we really want to work with the intervention and enrichment blocks, that 30-minute period, to really make the most of that and personalize that for the students in each classroom using data. We're working hard on MTSS, building upon the structures and knowledge of that. Also, we're going to be expanding the social, emotional, and behavior plans of MTSS as well this year. We further our work with the instructional coaches in HMH, and I think they've done a nice job, and teachers are very proficient with using that curriculum now. Another expansion of that in the next block is the student engagement piece. So now that we are proficient and familiar with the curriculum, we'll work to really engage the children in high-level learning so they want to take it to the next level. And lastly, the attendance piece. We still continue to struggle a little bit with attendance, but working every trimester to get it down to where it was pre-COVID, to get everybody wanting to come to school, be in school. I think that's the key there. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Kickamute is next. They've got a whole team here.
Good evening, y'all. So thank you for having us tonight. Mr. Morell, unfortunately, couldn't be here. He's in Israel right now, probably finishing up a Passover Seder. But nevertheless, we all came up here to present our data from Kickamute. So off to Ms. Clifford.
All right, good evening. So on the screen here we have just like everybody else, we have our RICAS data in ELA math and our NGSA data from last year. We see increases, small increases, but increases across the board with a larger increase in math. When we look at our iReady data down at the bottom, we currently, right now at the middle of the year for ELA, are where we ended off at the end of the year. So we're hopeful to see that the learning to continue. We also see increase in math. We are a little bit ahead of where we were at the beginning of the year. So we at the middle school have spent some time piloting, and we are into the adoption of our ELA and math curriculum. Our ELA curriculum is a little younger in adoption. Teachers right now are currently refining practice with our math curriculum in place for a few more years. We are currently collaborating with Mount Hope High School with RIDE and the Center for Public Research and Leadership. We are working with them to learn how to use some curriculum implementation tools. We've partnered with RIDE and Mount Hope to conduct math walkthroughs both at Kickamuit and also at Mount Hope High School. We're using that information to give us information about the level of implementation that we're seeing with the math curriculum, and so that we can target some feedback, PD, and this is all related to our math improvement goal and the school improvement plan. For our MLL students, we've had some realignment of instruction in ELA, where the support is targeted in the ELA class. The next bullet talks a little bit about the flex classes, just touching back to our students receiving MLL services. Those students are also able to receive flex, and we have a targeted program that we are using this year called Lexia English. It's customized for students that are newcomers. It's highly effective and evidence-based, and we're seeing some good movement right now. We also run flex classes for any student scoring 2 or more grade levels below in math or reading, and it's all based on our iReady data. We are continuing to run our math workshop and literacy classes. This is where every student gets an additional math class and an additional literacy class every other day. We are using this time to focus, to give students more time with MyPath so that they are able to focus on goal setting. Teachers are having data chats with students. We are in year 2 of our revised master schedule, where we were able to increase our class time from 50 minutes to 58 minutes. We have dedicated an uninterrupted CPT once per cycle for data analysis and planning. And currently we have, and last year as well, we have representation from KMS on the district MTSS core design team. We have 2 administrators and 2 teachers.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I'm all alone. All right, and so now for something just slightly different from the high school. As you can see, our results are there, and I think one of the things I'll point out is, with the high school, we have less longitudinal data because we're looking at, as you look across, you're looking at different cohorts of students. But what you can see is from 21 to 22, PSAT, 72%. When you look at that same cohort the following year, 77% in ELA and so forth. So that's kind of how I've used that information. 30 in math, 38% to 36. I did go back and just, inquisitive, look at the 20 to 21 PSAT just to kind of see, what did that look like? And ELA was 54% were proficient, meeting or exceeding in the PSAT for 2021, and 22% for math in 2021. So we are seeing movement of the needle in the right direction. So I think more, and now we are very proud of our NGSA, which is now part of our accountability, and we saw a nice increase there, and we'll continue to move in that direction. There we go. So what I wanted to highlight tonight for us was really, as I had spoken with the committee a year or so ago about moving away from our local assessment and bringing in the PSAT 9 for our freshmen to start to inform our instructional practices sooner versus later, with an assessment that is actually directly aligned to our SAT. So this is what our practice is in terms of grade 9, but moving forward with all of our grades. But grade 9 specifically, take the PSAT 9 in October. So we had PSAT information for them in October. So we can start to really dig into where are the deficits, what are we seeing? And so we have beginning of the year results and we have mid-year results. Beginning of the year results being the PSAT 9, the mid-year results being the midterm assessment that was aligned directly to SAT style questions, which we had propose would be our next way of monitoring students in a more aligned fashion. So you can see there, let me just go here, I have my totals. So for math, is that math up there? Yeah, so for math, we had about 29% of our students meeting or exceeding, and at mid-year, we were at 33%. And I'm going to move forward to ELA, where we saw, 29% meeting or exceeding at the beginning of the year, and roughly 57% meeting or exceeding at mid-year. So we know we have some work to do. I think I look back to math a little bit, and you can see at mid-year, we've decreased the number in not meeting or partially proficient, but I'm not seeing enough moving into the proficient range, and so that's sort of where we need to start to look. What we know and identified at the mid-year was a deficit with systems of two linear equations. So they've really started to hone into how do we embed that into practice now, and they've started doing that with 9th graders at this point. So that's how that's sort of really just quickly informing instruction. When you look at our improvement strategies, as always, our professional development is a primary focus. But now what we're looking is I'm leaning towards my leadership, or leaning on my district, my building leadership and my school improvement team to really start to look at this data and identify very specifically what are departmental needs based on the data, so that we can start to build much more targeted professional development that is aligned to content-specific areas. We're continuing to look at our collaborative teaching model and how do we support and engage our special educators and our content teachers in a effective way that we can start to really reach all levels of learners. And then our high-quality curriculum has been implemented, and as was mentioned by my esteemed colleague from the middle school, we are working with the CPRL, and I think one of the interesting things, or things that were identified in that sort of the feedback that the reflection afterwards was, it does identify strengths and areas of concern. And what we did see was sort of a malalignment. What I took away when I looked at it was a malalignment between, while our curriculum, specifically in math, is widely implemented, our teachers are still sort of rating themselves as novice. And so we know that we need to dig into what are the specific instructional strategies within the curriculum that target all levels of learners. So yes, we've got the curriculum, yes, we're implementing it, but now how do we refine and enhance our use of it in ways and really dig into the resources and the strategies that are there to start to make it much more accessible to all kids. And then, as I said, we have implemented the PSAT 9, but the work really now is how do we use that data? We have a freshman academy starting next year, so really how are we going to really hone in on our instructional practices within the team model to make sure that we're addressing those deficits we identify early on in 9th grade. And then I am a member of that core design team for MTSS. We have a subtly changed new schedule for next year, and really looking at how do we identify, or how do we enhance time within the schedule to start to really build in intervention time at the high school level, which is not something that's been typically done, but is something that needs to be done. So how do we start to do that? Professional development and all of our work within our departments and professional learning time will address Tier 1 and best practices, but we need to start getting those intervention times in for our struggling students. So that's the high school.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
know that was a lot of information all at once and a lot of educational jargon and abbreviations. We're happy to clarify. I think Mrs. King really summed it up, that we've got high-quality curriculum. We're using it across the district. We see that consistently. Now, how do we enhance our use of it and use all of the tools that are in there? And how do we get better at using data to really personalize learning for the students who still have unfinished learning and need to catch up, and to accelerate other students? So great work going on, and thank you all for being here this evening, and I'm happy to address any questions, or feel free to, ask the principals if you have questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sana. For the purposes of the committee, we are next month going to have a presentation just on professional development. So if there were any questions you had, because that was mentioned by every principal, if there were questions you had, they may be answered next month, but obviously, if anybody has questions for Dr. Sana?
I do.
Tara?
Thank you. Thank you for all of that information and the trends that we're seeing. My first question is pre-COVID numbers. So just as a reference point, do we have where we were prior to COVID? So is there a way to get those numbers, just to kind of gauge? I'm very happy that many of the schools have seen large increases, but just to have those numbers to compare would be helpful.
Sure, I will get those for you.
Thank you. My second question is all of the schools seem to be mentioning attendance as one of the major issues that a lot of them are facing. So my question is, what are the actual attendance rates at the schools? So at all of our schools, what are the attendance rates that you have now, and what are your goals for, for next year or even for this year to improve those? So that would be my second data question. And then my third question is also, so another thing, and Hugh Cole mentioned it, and I know that Colt Andrews has been a good leader in this, and we had talked about it in our budget meetings and also in some of the evaluation process, and that was inviting families back into the building. So one of the things that we found since COVID has happened is that many families don't, it's not as inviting as it used to be for families in the buildings, and I love the fact that schools are doing that again. But we talked about having more of a plan or more of I'm sorry, I can't think of my words right now, but something more concrete that we bring the families back, because we talked about how, and I might be dating myself, but when my children were younger, I was in the classroom every week helping my students' teachers. So like I was adding an extra group, a special group for that group of, taking a group of kids aside. And I was coming in every week. And we had talked about that as actually building your community back also, because when parents are invested, the kids are invested, and then the kids feel, it's a community aspect. So I noticed that many of you mentioned that in your goals for, improving your test scores. So I wanted to see if we had something more concrete, so something more of a kind of plan. And then my fourth question is the evaluation, and this is more of a high school question. And this is something that I've always been on the, I've always wanted to see it done at the high school level. And that's more of data collection on where our students are ending up. Because of course we want them to excel at the scores in their reading and their math skills. But where are they ending up? Like after the first year, when they graduate, where are they going? Like, are they going into colleges? Are they going into trades, trade schools, military, other venues? And then where are they in 4 years? Because I know that I've asked that question, but we don't really keep that data. But that might be also a good gauge on how successful we are being at the high school level to see, we're giving them all the skills, and this is how they're using them. So I'd be interested I know that that's a big ask, but if that's something that we could maybe put into some kind of future data collection for especially for Mount Hope High School. So.
I do think we can work on the year 1. Year 4, I know the state collects it for all of our state universities. I'll just have to see if we can get just our data out of that, because the only way we could collect it would be if kids linked back to us. But for the state universities, they do keep track of that. So I'm going to see if we can find out how to break out for Bristol Warren residents the 4-year rates, or for at least for our in-state schools, we can definitely get that. The private schools that are out of state,
Yeah,
the
no.
4-year will be tricky. We can probably get a pretty good number on year 1 based on where kids are asking us to send their materials and all that stuff for this year, so we could get that for you.
And there is a guidance end of year report that does get generated every year to show percentage going to 4-year college, percentage going to 2-year, trades, military, workforce, other. So we do produce that every year, so that information.
Yep.
And I appreciate that, and I understand that. I'm kind of looking at, well, because I know a lot of kids that have gone to college, but didn't stay in college. So I know a lot of students that went to a trade and then ended up going to college. So I'm just wondering where our students are heading. You know, how are they using the skills that we've given them?
And absenteeism rates, do we have updated numbers on
We
that?
could do that for end of the year also, is report out on where we are, because we can look at it daily, and I know the principals do look at it daily. I'm pretty sure that one of our principals keeps track of how many days she wins on the attendance roster. Excellent, excellent. So yes, we can do a wrap-up of attendance at the end of the year for you.
So maybe for when we have the end of year presentations, we could have attendance as well as any information we have about post-graduation data.
Sure.
I can tell you that we all have committees too that we look at our daily attendance to look to see if there's patterns in lateness and absenteeism and in certain kids or classes.
They're working hard.
Whatever's going on, and we track that. We have 3 different communications that we send to parents depending on what the issue is, so that they're fully aware always of how many days and how much. We have people in the building assigned to checking with those kiddos to tell them that we missed them yesterday, we're glad you're here today, so that they feel welcome and, you know, get in the door and get a good start on the day. Because, I mean, isn't that the basis of being able to teach them something in time and there and they're excited about it?
Right. I know it's been a big focus, so it would be interesting to see year-on-year data, given that it has been such a focus this year. Anybody else? Carly?
I just wanted to acknowledge, thank you for all the administrators that came out and all the work that kind of went in to present all of this data to us. It's really nice to have that mid-year snapshot and sort of see the growth and the areas that we still need to focus on. So thank you. I just wanted to highlight too that the attendance is a national issue. It's not just something that's unique to Bristol Warren. I know that there's so much work being done because we're having to, I'm speculating, but we're having to change kind of messaging. Gosh, for the longest time it was like, if you have a sniffle, don't come to school. And we're not in that realm anymore. So it's kind of retraining families and teachers and kids and administrators and everyone to sort of change that lens again back to sort of pre-COVID and looking at, please do come to school because you need to be present. It's not something that's optional, and I think for such a long time, that's sort of the perspective we've had. So thank you again for highlighting that and the work, and I can't wait to see sort of what happens not only locally, but nationally as we focus so much on this. Lots of our administrators too mentioned this scheduling tool, so I was a little curious about how that actually works.
So we've had a little unique experience with schools that aren't all on the same, even opening, start of day and end of day because of buses. So we're trying to fix that, but also in order to really get the most out of our shared staff. For example, you know we have literacy coaches working across the district. Having a unified schedule we thought would be advantageous and would allow us really the opportunity to help the principals for planning for CTT and for efficient scheduling, but to get the most out of our learning time with students. So as we've partnered with DMC on a few other projects, this is another project we're partnering with DMC on and using their elementary planning schedule tool. And so the principals have all been working on that with Dr. Santa. So we're hoping that's also going to help facilitate the work that we're doing at the elementary level.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you,
Madam
Claire.
Chair?
Yes, Marge?
When we talk about absenteeism, I'd like to know how many of our teachers are present on a regular basis, and not by individual, but what percentage of students don't have a teacher in front of them every day, because I know it's not that good, and I know it needs to be improved, and I'd like to see what we're doing to encourage that. because teachers are role models for students. And if teachers aren't in the classroom, then why are the students in the classroom? And the only reason I bring that up is because I may have white hair, but I do hang around with younger people who have children in school who are calling them and saying, why do I have to be here today? I don't have a teacher. So I would like to have some information, maybe by end of year, as to what exactly is happening on that front, because I also noticed in our budget that we are way over on the substitute line, like 300K over on the substitute line. So that sends me a little bit of a message as well. So I would really like to see that data. Not by individual, not even by, well, you could look at it by school, but you don't have to necessarily give it to me by school. It's just, or us by school. It's just more a matter of, is that having a negative influence on it, and what are we doing to improve that?
Yep.
That has also been widely improved, I'd say, from COVID. Same to when we told kids to stay home, staff had to stay home, they had to isolate. All of those procedures are now are gone. I have to say, we're over on substitutes, but remember, in that substitute line are also things like maternity leaves, and we're very fortunate to have a lot of young staff. So we have quite a few people on maternity leave, so that all figures into attendance. So when we see the substitute line being over, I just want to be cautious of that includes things like maternity leaves and other long-term leaves that aren't necessarily a sign of chronic absenteeism for teachers. I think our teacher attendance, like our student attendance, is much improved, and I do think it's coming out of that. A lot of it is coming out of that COVID wave of, if you're sick, you stay home. I mean, we have teachers who we've had to send home because they're sick and they shouldn't be in school. So I do think there's been a little reversal of what used to occur during COVID time. So we can share all that data with you.
Yeah, no, I wasn't making a negative statement. I wanted to see
Yep.
across the board, because the last time we looked at it, it was somewhere in the 20s percentile,
Sure.
higher 20 percentile. And I think that probably has an impact on student
Yep. I don't know
attendance.
if you guys think that would make more sense as part of the PD presentation, as it is about teacher and staff morale and so on, or end of
I
year,
don't know
whichever you
where,
prefer.
but since
Yep.
Tara asked about
Yep.
absenteeism, I thought I would make it a whole district event.
Yep, whichever makes sense in terms of when you want to present that. I agree. Anything else from the committee? Great. Thank you all very much for being here and sharing news from your buildings. Thank you. Next up, we have our PMA Perkins Eastman update.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me okay? There we go. So Chad Critton, the PMA, the owner's project manager, and I have Lisa Pora with Perkins Eastman here, and we're going to run through just a quick status update, design update, some cost figures, and then answer any questions that you have about the stage 3 schematic design submission. So very quickly, overview of what's happened since the last time we met with the school committee. So we've had a handful of meetings, planning. The technical review committee with Bristol met in early March. We met a few times with RIDE. We've had very specific conversations with them as far as budget, schedule, mechanical systems, CHIPS, which is the collaborative for high performance schools. Big milestone coming up is that schematic design submission to RIDE. So with the committee's approval, we are going to submit that this week. And then after that, we'll charge right forward into DD. So we do have a meeting scheduled with RIDE for May 2nd and a tentative one for May 9th, and that's a page turn meeting at their offices to just go through the submission package. The DD process will look a lot like what you just saw for schematic design. It'll be the same. So we'll have a period of design refinement through early June. The package will go to the estimators. Estimates will be reconciled. We'll have another scoping and value management session just like we just wrapped up with the building committee. And then that DD gets submitted to RIDE, and we do it one more time for 60% CDs. Really just a rinse repeat until we get to a final design and bidding later this year. I'll turn it to Lisa and she can speak.
Good evening, everyone. So what you see up on the screen is a work plan for the design development phase. We've kind of kicked off some of the early phases of design development in-house with our design team. But just to look at some of the meetings ahead, we have our, as Chad had mentioned, an upcoming meeting on May 2nd with RIDE, and then another additional meeting possibly on May 9th to review the projects. That would be all the projects at high school as well as the CIP projects. We are hoping to have a meeting with the school building committee on May 9th as well. So if the time doesn't work due to the RIDE meeting, we want to see if we can have an alternate time to meet, but we thought it was an important time to give a design update to the school building committee. We'll be starting the permit process as we've started to get some of our survey information in from the consultants. They're still working a little bit out on the Mount Hope High School site, and you've probably, the schools have probably started to see them at Kickamuit and Hugh Cole as they've been working on that survey as well. That's really important information that we need to go through the permit process with RIDEM, CRNC, as well as both towns of Bristol and Warren. But we're hoping to get some submissions in this summer. Also during the design development phase, we start to get some more specialty consultants involved. We have our audio visual consultant for the high school. We have a lighting consultant to talk to us about some lighting design. We'll work with IT and also our FF&E consultants. We're getting meetings scheduled at the high school for our next round of user meetings in which the FF&E consultants will be involved with, so we'll start to look at layouts in all of the spaces. And then we're looking to try to complete our DD estimating set in late spring so that we can get some budgets pulled together by mid-July. So, and then the little purple line on the bottom there, that's actually Rockwell. We are moving ahead, getting that drainage design done for the Rockwell playground so that we can get that out to bid hopefully next month, get that work done when the kids get out of school so that the new play surface can be installed with that grant program that's in place. So, any questions on the work plan before? Yes.
I have a question. The athletic field review meeting with Roger Williams, can you, what is that?
So I think that's something that we're probably just starting to get some new information on, or maybe some discussions have already happened, but there were some interest raised with the district of Roger Williams possibly having some scheduled time at the high school to either use the baseball field or the track and stuff. I'm not sure. It was always something that we've had in our schedule of possible meetings moving forward. I don't know if Anna, you wanted to add anything to that?
Sure. So we had done an initial reach out to Roger Williams in order to assess whether there were any of their fields that we could utilize when our fields are not usable by our students, whether it's due to construction or the truck. So when we did that reach out, they expressed an interest in some possible collaboration and being not funders of whole programs, but supporting programs by providing some funding over years if they could also utilize those facilities. So one example they gave is if we were willing to put a baseball field with lights so they could use it for night games, then they would contribute some sort of payment towards using that field with lights over a certain number of years. This is a partnership. They currently have with Portsmouth that is getting ready to expire, and since we are in their community and in the same town as they are, it would be something that would be advantageous for both them and their students and for us. So it's a meeting we're going to have to see what that looks like, what their ability to contribute to the project might be, and what fields they have any interest in. So for example, with Portsmouth, they just use their track and field, but if our track and field fits their needs, is that now a relationship we can have with them versus them
And
having it with
just out of curiosity, what would that process be? Would that be the school committee that would enter into those conversations or decisions, or would that just be administration, or would that be building?
Since I was the one who did that with Roger Williams from Portsmouth, I'll tell you it was a conversation I had with their AD and with our AD and with the one of the vice presidents of the college, and then the contract or the agreement came before the school committee for approval, and it goes before their board for approval.
Okay, and then the second question I had was on the test pits, the hazmat testing. So recently, to be honest with you, I did not know this before, there has been a lot of question about illnesses at the high school. And so I'm just wondering what the hazmat testing entailed in the evaluation or the test pits. Again, I know that Anna, somebody had mentioned that the site was once a dump, and you had said no, that was not.
The Department of Health did an investigation.
Right.
Yep.
So I know that you had said that it wasn't.
Yep.
So when I saw on here hazmat testing and evaluation, I just wanted to know, did we get those results, or did we, as a committee, I don't think the building committee got them, but.
Well, in our stage 2 report, we have a geoenvironmental report, a full geoenvironmental report. I think it's like maybe 3 inches thick in the appendix, which does the whole history of the site that was studied. The only findings that they had of that was the oil tank at the high school, in which we've done further evaluations on, and a proposal is in place on the remediation of that soil where the oil tank was. It's a small area on the site, so that's in with the district now for review. As far as the hazardous materials report, that's specific to the existing building itself, so that when the building, or before the building is demolished, all of the things like asbestos or PCBs or things like that can be properly removed. That is also part of the stage 2 and will also be part of the stage 3 report. Some of those testings at the high school are still ongoing. I know they were out there during school vacation week, because some of the testing that they do is requires them to cut holes and make noise and stuff, so we prefer to do it when the students aren't in the building. We do not have any of the test results back. When we tested the roof a few weeks ago, we did find that there was no asbestos in the roof, so we were able to remove that cost from the budget. So that's why we do all this testing ahead of time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Adam.
Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate just the work plan. It's very important here in DD. Is it possible at some point, it sounds like the next building committee will be in the middle of the user meetings, if Perkins could just define the individual groups who are the users, just so we get an understanding of who that is?
Absolutely.
A suggestion I would have and hope is that we could have another round of user meetings prior to DD completion and maybe after the consultant meetings, just so that we just take another refining and look at that and really get the user's perspective, because I think it's very important right now in the details.
Yep.
My hope is that also when we get into that next level of refinement, that we can see these details a little more clear when we have the building review meeting. So let's see what some of these classrooms are going to look like. Let's see a little more. I think that will just be helpful for me to understand, us to understand rather. Thank you.
So in the in this next phase of user meetings, we'll be putting together a packet of each space that will show the floor plan of the room, all of the equipment, and list all the equipment and furniture and things like that that'll be in it. And then we'll package all that together and be able to share it with everyone. So.
And if you could include the notes
Absolutely.
taken, that would be great. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody else? Questions for Lisa? Thank you, Lisa.
Very good. Okay, so I was just going to flip through quickly some of our comments on where the projects stand right now as far as the budget that we've worked on with everybody over the past couple of months. As far as the new high school project, all of the programmatic educational spaces have all remained intact in the design, the 3-court gymnasium, all of the community spaces, the auditorium, media center, cafeteria, those have all been maintained within the building design as we've evolved it throughout our value management phases to get the project on budget. As far as site improvements, the project does include the synthetic turf field, the new softball field, the tennis courts. Stormwater obviously is something that was very important to make sure that it didn't get touched. There are minimal improvements being made to Silver Creek, but we will get some natural plantings around that creek. We just won't be able to take it to that higher level that the town was looking at us to do. Obviously, the major things, site lighting, site planting, traffic loop parking and stuff is all maintained within the project. Some of the items that actually ended up on the add alternate list, these are things we want to track throughout the next design development phase, the budget phases. That includes irrigation to the softball field and the football field, adding the baseball field in at the existing school site, the athletic track, making that track the regulation size, redoing the track. Those are the bigger ones, and then some of the more minor items are the tennis court lights, press box, grandstands, prefabricated storage sheds on the site, the outdoor learning spaces, which we have some in the budget, but it would be kind of enhancing that design, increase in planting, and then the bigger items that we've been tracking throughout the process is the geothermal design. Moving into the CIP projects, just want to take a look at Hugh Cole first. A lot of the things at all the CIP projects, we're still maintaining the necessary upgrades to the MEP systems. One of the big ones at Hugh Cole was working on the new roof at the original building, and also accessibility upgrades, as well as the site work, getting in, redoing all the loop road and the rear parking and play surface areas. All those things are all been maintained to make improvements on for the CIP projects. Moving into Colt Andrews, very similar, making some of those necessary maintenance repairs to the mechanical system. We have the 2 new kindergartens in the Andrews buildings, which will receive 2 new toilet rooms. Once again, all the necessary ADA upgrades that are required. I think that's most of the items. I didn't want to go through and read through bullet by bullet on you, so I'll just kind of summarize. Rockwell, we talked about the drainage at the playground site. We'll be doing all of the new unit ventilators. Oh, thanks, Chad. So, new unit ventilators in the classrooms, the new boiler for the building. That's really the big upgrade at the Rockwell School. And then lastly is the Kickamuit School, where once again making a lot of the necessary MEP upgrades, getting the new electrical service into the building, which is actually a big item at the middle school, redoing the roof, also another big, large budget item, as well as redoing the parking lot resurfacing, and then making all the necessary changes to the floor plans to incorporate the 5th grade and get all the programmatic spaces to work out in that area. So, and that's my summary. Any questions before
Can I just confirm, what you just showed us is basically a high-level summary of the 610-page Stage 3 submission, correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
I did have one question. The chain link fence at Hugh Cole, where is that going?
I would have to go back and look. It's probably the gate that
That's
we
what I
are-
was wondering. Is
that
it
we're
the gate
putting
to
in-
close off the play area?
Correct, yep. So I
Okay,
don't know
so
why.
it's not a full chain link fence?
No, it's a big-
And the demolition of the play area is the playground, the hard top?
Correct, it would be.
It's not one of the playgrounds?
It would be that hard surface playscape in the rear of the building that would be redone. It'd be some plantings put in that area along the school, and then we would resurface the hard play area.
Okay.
Any other questions for Lisa on this portion of the presentation? Thank you, Lisa.
All right, so Lisa gave a detailed look. I'm gonna just roll it up a little higher summary. So budget-wise, big picture, the high school is 128 million of the 151 million in estimated construction costs. So a little over 75% there. When you look at the detail of the high school, we are carrying contingencies and escalation in there. So you see the green bar and the light purple bar. So total amount there is 14 and change $million, almost $15 million. So when you jump into the schools, and this really shows you just a different view of how the scope is broken up in each of the buildings. So Kick and Mute, you can see is fairly equal. There's some interior upgrades. You're doing mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection system upgrades. You're doing some roofing work and some site work. So all relatively equal in that building. A little bit of exterior work, not that much. Some repointing, cleaning up, things like that. Over at Rockwell Elementary, most of the work at that building is the mechanical, electrical, fire protection, and then the required interior work to accommodate those new systems and system replacements. Again, a little bit of site work, a little bit of exterior work, but the bulk of it is that interiors. Over at Colt Andrews, very similar. Vast majority of the work there is going to happen inside of the building, to be expected, of course, given the historic nature of those buildings. And then at Hugh Cole, everything is fairly well split. So again, interior upgrades, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, some roof work, and some site work. So a little bit of everything at Hugh Cole. So just next level of summary from what Lisa just described. So total project budget, far left is where we were at stage 2, just shy of that $200 million limit. The estimates at stage 3 prior to reconciliation and value management are the middle grade out bar there. So we started at $211 million. It's not uncommon because as you evolve the design, you're getting lots of feedback from the different user groups, and you get kind of a wish list together, and then the committee meets to iron out the wish list and dial it back in the budget. Where we landed is on the far right, so a little over $186 million. That's the submission number to RIDE, so below that $200 million authorization limit. Again, that also includes that design and pricing contingency, $13 million. So escalation is not broken out, just design and pricing on that case. So a little bit of a cushion there, but that does tend to be absorbed through the evolution of design. And then hard to see on this screen, but again, just looking back through, so the first, second, and third, everyone remembers last fall we had the tax impact calculator, and there were 3 scenarios: best case, worst case, and then a mid-range. So the second bar from the left is that mid-range, and what you're looking at there are the purple bars on the bottom. So we've always had costs that we knew would be eligible for reimbursement, and then costs that would be 100% in the district, because RIDE's program caps construction costs at a cost that is below what it costs to build a building. So the purple represents the district share in this, and you can see the green bar that slices right through them. So that's really the range of the district share from the best case to the worst case. The fourth bar from the right is where we were at the end of stage 2. So once we got that December 19th approval from RIDE, and they came back and said, here's the grant amount that you're going to be awarded based on your eligible costs. And then on the far right side, you see where we are as of the stage 3 submission. So you can see, stack those 2 purple bars up and you're right back closer to that mid-range cost estimate scenario for district share purposes. So really where we want to be as far as that goes. And this, again, remember, we have to do this at DD, and we have to do this as 60% CDs. So the goal is to keep it close, and we always have a chance to dial it in as much as the committees like. And then very quickly, I'll wrap up with next steps. So we have design development, and that is expected to wrap up in July. So that's when we'll be here again, having the same conversation with that evolution of design. And then we do it one more time at 60% design, and that happens this fall. After that, we roll forward to 100% design, we go to bid, and then we look to make the contract award early next year and break ground. That's all I have, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chad. I just wanted to quickly clarify, and then I'd love to hear everyone's questions. That middle bar that you were talking about, just to be clear that that's referring to the tax impact calculator. So we're back, I just want to be clear that we're at the number, that mid-range number that was used in the tax impact calculator. Is that correct?
We're at the mid-range number for district share, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. The
Thank
calculator, I mean, assumes interest rates and lots of other variables that are going to change. And
Right.
realistically, you can't bond the project until you're near complete.
Right.
So the best tool we have right now is to look at what the district share of the project cost is and manage that district share.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone?
I have some questions.
Yes, Tara.
Thank you. I apologize. I haven't really been able to absorb. We didn't get this until, I think, Saturday, and so I wasn't able to really absorb the numbers. So I'm sure, but I did meet with Adam, and I probably will meet with you again if that's okay, just to kind of review some of this. But one of my questions is, why are our numbers, so RIDE's prediction for our estimates were for the schools, not for the high school, but for Colt Andrews, Hugh Cole, Rockwell, and KMS. Their values came in higher. So they estimated, they gave us 5.1 million for Colt Andrews. But here, we're only saying that Colt Andrews is going to be 2.8. Or am I misreading that? Is the 5 million including the soft cost and the contingency?
So that's a piece of it, but I think generally you're correct in that the cost on some of the CIP projects has come down, and that has allowed you to keep some of the scope in the high school. So in one of those or multiple of those meetings we've had with RIDE, they have recommended that we look and not cut from the high school, because the CIP projects are things that can always happen years forward, operational, I mean, things like repointing, routine maintenance stuff. So I think their position was, why take meaningful scope out of the high school? You have one shot to do your high school. We're not going to penalize you if you shift money from a CIP project to the high school. So that was the mindset going into that building committee meeting on March 28th when we parsed out the scope and landed at the numbers that are there.
So what we've done is we have changed the scope of work that are taking place at the elementary and the middle school. Or did those numbers come in lower and we're still doing the work?
No, some of the scope changed.
Okay,
So some of it is the estimators getting better information, they're getting more detail. Remember, especially something like a CIP, they're going to have very high contingencies just because there's a lot of unknowns when you're dealing with the renovation. So as you start to dial in the scope and get the scope refined, they're able to dial down those contingencies.
And we don't lose any money from RIDE because we've changed what we were originally asking?
That's what RIDE has told us, yep, and that is in writing.
So another question that I have was the markups, and I know you've explained it to us before, but in the pie chart, the markups, do those include the soft cost and the contingency?
So the pie charts are construction costs only. So there are some contingencies, but not all the contingency. You have an owner's contingency of 6%, that is yours to control. But within that construction cost estimate, you have design and pricing contingencies and escalation. So escalation is, we know what things cost today, we don't know what they'll cost in January when they go to bid the project out. So the estimators look at historic market data and they add, I think in this case it was 4 or 5% to their numbers to try to predict where the market's going to be almost a year from now. So that's one of the contingencies in there. The other one's design and pricing, and that's really just for the unknowns, both on the design end and on the estimating end. So the designers are still working, getting feedback, they're developing, refining. Then the estimators are also still trying to lock in on the scope. So there are some contingencies. But there's...
Just so I know, just because I'm trying to make sense of it in my mind. So for the high school, the project is now 128 million in change. On top of that will be contingency of 6%, soft costs of 18%,
Right.
and then a design contingency. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's correct.
So-
And then some of the markups are also, it's insurance, bonds.
Right.
Things like temporary fencing, erosion control, stuff like that. We call those general requirements and general conditions. And,
Which is where we get the 186 million. Okay.
Yep.
So, and then another question that I have is the reconciled estimates, and I thank you for adjusting those numbers, because that was one of the questions that had come up about the tax calculator being adjusted to what we actually received. And I'm not understanding the mid-level, because when we did on the district site, it still has the 183 million at 4.5% over 30 years at 83%, and that's where the tax calculation number comes in. And that had us at 47 million. And then when we look now where we are at, and this is only with the cap at 186 million, though we still have the potential to go to 200 million, we're at 50, the difference is 55. I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense, does it?
I followed you. So
Okay.
so the calculator, so there were two different versions of the calculator back in September, and
Okay.
I think in October it might have changed. So September, calculator came out, and it had best, mid, worst. There were 3 different scenarios. During the community outreach process, and actually came up even during the abutters meetings, there was a lot of concern about having a range, and a request was made to just publish a number and then write what that number was based upon. So at that point, the calculator was updated, and the one that you see up there is not the mid-range, it's actually the best case scenario, which is that 183 billion eligible costs at 83% reimbursement. So, but that should be updated, I do agree.
Yeah, so on the district website, it is not updated. It is still the,
It's 183.
it's still the
best
old,
case.
it's still the one that has the 183 at 83%.
Yeah. And
But-
there's been changes for the better too since then. So the district share is one piece. Another major piece is interest rates. So interest rates have improved a little bit, not much in that time, but the interest rates have improved.
And then,
Another one is the bonding scenario. So we originally front-loaded the cash flow, and we were soaking up that pay-go money early this summer. When we were going through the estimating process, reaching out to contractors, there was actually a savings that's captured in the numbers there of $250,000 to lump those projects in as one bid package. So what that did is it pushed out your cash flow needs later to next year. So you can actually cover your costs through, I think it's April or May of next year, with just the ride pay-go. So you're not borrowing as much early, which makes a big difference. So there's a lot of variables that go into the calculator, which is why it's tricky to redo it every time we hit a new design iteration. But there may be benefit. It's a process, and there's a lot of people involved and a lot of variables.
yeah, my biggest concern is that we're putting here that the max is 186 million, but the voting is 200 million. So even if, the possibility of going out to 200 million is still there.
It was up to 200 million.
Right.
But it was never discussed going to 200 million.
It isn't, but the community has the ability, the school department has the ability to go to 200 million, even if it's not even if it's not the intention, we still have that, we don't have to go back to the taxpayer and ask for additional funds. So this 186, that may be our goal, but the risk is still there that we could go to 200 million. Because we still have the bonding ability due to the referendum to go to 200 million.
Right, and that's where you guys on the school building committee come in, to make sure that decisions are made that we do not.
Yeah, no, but
We're working backwards in scope to meet budget. We're not starting with the number and fitting whatever we want in. We're starting with the number that we
it's still a
promised.
risk. It's still a risk.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's still there, and when they built this addition for this building, it was supposed to be $6 million, and it ended up costing them $12 million. It doubled. So I'm just saying, you know, the risk is definitely there. So I think there should be something that shows us that number as well.
Fair enough.
Anyone else? Questions or comments? Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
We started early in the hopes that we could keep Carly before she went home to celebrate Passover with her family, but we unfortunately didn't get to our action items, but those were two very important presentations, so thank you all. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the school committee and will be enacted by one motion. Would anybody like to remove anything from consent?
I'd love to remove homeschool requests, but I'm not going to do it tonight in the essence of time. I'm just going to say clearly, it's April.
Got it. Thank you, Marge. Please, can I have a motion to accept all items A through D on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. First item on discussion and/or possible action. Item A, standardized monthly financial reports. These are on this agenda rather than usually they're in consent because they haven't been to budget yet. I would like to state for the record that I think they should be not on consent because it's one of the major jobs of the entire committee. I think that they should be for discussion. So they should be discussed first, I think, with everybody here. So I'm glad that we're getting to do it this way. Superintendent.
I'm going to pass it to Danielle. However, before we move on, I do want to publicly thank the Rotary that donated $4,000 to DECA. That was on the consent agenda,
yes.
So they will get a letter of thanks from me on the committee's behalf. So I just do want to give them a public shout out since that was a generous donation. And then I'll let Danielle run through the standardized
Yes, thank you,
reports.
DECA. And it's the second or third year, I think, that they've done it. So, Danielle.
These are the items I've been continuing to mention. I just put them all in one memo as we get closer to the end of the year. As you can see in the memo, we have salary substitutes. And again, I just wanted to clarify, we're only over 23,000 right now as of March 31st of that, and then some event coverage and vacation payout as well.
Does anybody have questions on this memo for Danielle?
I have a question on the variances.
Well, let's finish with this document first. My question, I guess, is the obvious one, which is on the items that we're going over budget. What's the plan?
Well, I think for instance, for salaries and substitutes like Anna, like Superintendent Riley had explained, those items are made up in the salary line as well, because those people, when they're out, they need substitutes long-term, as well as some other staff that we have too that were out in different offices and substitutes were brought in as well.
So maternity leave is a perfect example. Those are usually our young staff who don't have enough sick time in their bank to actually be paid for their full maternity leave. So their salaries end up covering those subs, so those kind of wash out at the end. So Danielle has just been highlighting where we've been under budget. I've asked her to include where we have savings in some of our other lines so that you can see that overall we are still in a good place for the budget. For example, as you know, we've shifted the retiree health insurance. There will be a significant savings in that line. So right now we're still confident to be on budget, and so we'll just add that to the memo so you can see the balance of both things.
Yes. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah, don't only tell the bad news.
I know, I had to be the sunshine today, imagine.
Thank you. And then on the other report, Tara?
So the variant, so now that the transfers are taking place, some of the lines are not equaling up. So when you reduce from one line with the numbers from the previous month, it's not the same, it's not equal. So I just didn't know if that was just I wanted to know what the differentiation was, or why.
You mean if you're comparing the account object code from one month to the next?
And then with the line transfers. So for instance, the equipment line. The equipment line, we transferred money last month, and we transferred money this month. But it's off $511. And then the tuition reimbursement, the tuition to educational services and private sources, there's like a $65,000 differentiation. So I didn't know if that was just, the reporting is not.
I would have to look into what exactly, because I don't see it where I'm looking at, but I can look into it. So you were saying the tuitions and the...
And I was looking at this quickly today, so it's not, I definitely know the equipment line is not, and I know there was the 65,000 for, but it might be a wash between those two lines, because I know that's where you transferred all of the funds from and to. But
are you talking months?
Month to month with
I see.
with the transfers.
So you're talking about equipment in this line, there's a few
Yeah, there's a
equipments in
$500
here.
difference.
So are you looking, but I'm just looking at equipment's on here a few times. Do you know which budget journal entry item you're talking about? So for example, there's equipment HR.
57305.
So in total?
No, that's the line. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the equipment line.
That's the equipment line.
Right, I'm just saying there's more than one on here?
So, there was more than one.
Yeah, there's budget entry 133 and then budget entry 197. Are those the only two? And you're talking about in total?
Right, when just the reconciliation didn't work.
Yep, I'm just trying to make sure I get the right things here. We'll take a look at that to make sure.
Anything else, Tara?
Nope.
I had a question, because I noticed two lines were moving money from flood insurance, particularly at the high school.
We had a savings on flood insurance. Because we went through, remember we talked about this earlier, the company we used to use went out of business. And so we had to get our insurance through FEMA, which actually ended up being a
That's right.
savings. And so we've been able to transfer funds from that line into other lines
Yep.
that we haven't had enough.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to make sure that that wasn't a line item we were skipping.
Oh, no.
Thank you. Any other questions on the budget transfer report?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. I'm looking at this, and we're over budget by what, $750,000? It says in total for all of the things that we still have to pay for that aren't in our lines, and I would assume that that's the case, or they wouldn't be reported here. And I know that you can move stuff from line to line, but you can't move that much money from line to line to cover that amount of, those amount of costs that you've indicated here. I don't know that you can find $400,000 in salary substitutes and line items.
No, so that was what was adopted. So I'm just telling you what was adopted, that's not what we're over. We're only over 30,000 for salaries. You adopted 398,000. Event coverage, you adopted 19.
So
That's not the total overage, that's just what you adopted.
could you go through that again, please? Because I'm seeing that we have
Yeah, so for salaries for substitutes, what you adopted in your FY24 budget is $398,927. If you look at my general fund expenditure by object report, it shows that we're over by $23,927. I just listed what was adopted, and then I figured people would look at the
I did the
report.
same math as Marge. I thought that was the number we were over,
No.
which was very alarming.
I can change that moving forward.
We're not over.
I can change that, but
I did, well, it does say,
Okay.
the following budget items are currently over budget.
and I was trying to just show that those were a budget and what the description of
Yeah, we're
those
only
items
over
were for everyone.
I see.
Yeah, no, I'm sure she's telling me what it,
That's a big difference.
what it actually is. It's a significant difference, and it paints a very significant change in a scenario when you put it this way, because now I have to go dig into the lines to find out what we did. Because you just gave me the amount we allowed, and now you're finally telling me that it's 23K over.
Well,
When
if you
in
look
the
at the-
beginning, when you talked about over budget, we are $23,000 over budget
In that one line.
in that one line.
But in your total for salaries right now, you are still, you've only used 60%.
Well, that would make sense, because we're not finished with the year. So I'm not, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way this was reported. Makes it clear, at least to a significant number of us, that we were over that much money.
This is how I've been reporting since January. I can change it if you'd like.
Well, the actual number is not 400,000, it's 23,000.
Yep.
Right.
And that is not reflected in this report. What else am I supposed to take from this
It's
report?
on the second page. That was my bad. It's on the, if you look at the second page, it's there.
Yeah, if you want to go to the lines
Yeah.
and play with the lines, but if you want to read the report as it stands, it doesn't read that way.
Yeah, so if we could have the amount that we're over, that would be great.
Yes, yeah.
We'll review it.
Why?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Danielle, and thank you, Marge. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is item B, the PMA Perkins Eastman payments. Superintendent? or Danielle?
Danielle again?
Yep, so these are just, again, the payments that we've made towards stage 3.
Do you need a vote?
No, this was just the budget subcommittee had asked for a regular accounting of what we were paying out, so we just reported out to budget subcommittee. So we were reporting it out to the full committee. You already voted on the full total prior to this. This is just the monthly breakout as requested by the budget subcommittee.
Any questions from anyone? Nope. Thank you. Next up, item C. Please can I have a motion to approve policy GBEB AIDS removal as recommended by the Health and Wellness Subcommittee for final read?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
May I ask why they're being removed? Is it from a duplicate perspective?
I'll ask Dr. Caldwell to share since she was part of this discussion with Health and Wellness.
Hi, good evening.
Or Sarah, who's the chair of that
Yeah, I was just going to
subcommittee,
say, Sarah, if you want to jump in as well, but essentially, a lot of these policies were written years and years ago when there were requirements perhaps to have these kinds of policies, but at this point, when we start talking about things like, in this case, AIDS, I don't think that we have a need for some of the things that are contained within it. Compared to where we were years ago, which I'm just looking at the date of this particular one. I mean, this goes back to, right, to 1994 originally.
Yeah.
So, keep in mind that we abide by our Rhode Island Department of Health regulations. And perhaps at one time back then there was a requirement for it, but there is nothing in the current DOH regulations that require it. Sarah, did you want to add anything?
Just that in other policies that cover disease-type issues, anything that was in here that is
It may
currently...
be covered elsewhere.
appropriate is in policy elsewhere.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would comment that we've been trying to get rid of these policies for 10 years. And Lisa's absolutely correct. When we tried before, the law wouldn't let us. And I'm glad that the law does now, because I find them offensive. So, thank you.
Thank you all. So we have a motion on the floor to accept policy GBEB for a final read. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Next up, can I have a motion to approve policy JHCC, communicable diseases, removal as recommended by the Health and Wellness Subcommittee for final read?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve policy JHCCE, HIV, hepatitis infected students and employees for removal as recommended by the Health and Wellness Subcommittee for a final read?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Please can I have a motion to accept policy DIC, financial reports and statements for review, first read?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I have a letter, a statement from Jessica that I'd like to read.
Sure.
So Jessica was not able to stay at the meeting tonight, but she wanted me to read this statement for her. Sorry. She had a prior obligation and she was not able to stay at this meeting. This statement is to the policy subcommittee and the, okay. So I find it very concerning that policies are being changed to give more authority to the superintendent, which continues to limit and phase out school committee authority and involvement. Recent examples is on tonight's agenda, which is the proposed change, the financial report and statement policy, specifically the spending and fund balance policy. The policy subcommittee is proposing to eliminate the following. In the event that the amount assigned for cash flow above or below the desired range of unassigned funds balance, the Director of Administration and Finance shall report such amounts to the school committee as soon as practical after the end of the fiscal year. Should the actual amount assigned for cash flow fall below the desired range, the school committee shall create a plan to restore the fund to the appropriate levels. Why are we removing this? Why does it seem you are trying to avoid sharing financial information? You are taking away transparency and once again limiting the school committee's role. The school committee was created for a reason, and with all of these policy changes, you are also making it difficult to hold others accountable. Regardless of who suggested the proposed change, I think the policy should stay as is. Because the truth is, every time a policy change is made limiting the role of the school committee, the superintendent has continuously stated that all the information and decisions will still go through the full school committee. But that is in fact not happening. There has been information withheld, and without a policy stating what needs to be disclosed, there is nothing making the finance held accountable to do so. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Tara. Would anybody from policy or the superintendent like to weigh in?
I have a comment, but not to weigh in.
Kyle, do you want to, or, we're not actually changing anything really in this policy except for wording. And we added that all balance movements should go before the school committee for approval. So it's really just a tweaking of the words to make the policy more understandable.
I disagree. I disagree so vehemently, I can't even believe it. We have a policy that makes it clear that we need 4% of our operating expenditures, and we need them in case of emergency. Explains what that is. You're taking that out.
No, we're not.
It's
Yes,
still
you are.
in there.
4% is still here.
Oh, where?
Number 5.
At the end of each-
fiscal year, the Director of Administration and Finance will report the portion of the unassigned fund balance. In addition, the Director of the Administration and Finance shall maintain an unassigned fund balance of no less than 4% of total general fund budgeted operating expenditures. And then an A below that, should the actual amount assigned for cash flow fall below the desired range, the school committee shall create a plan to restore the fund to the appropriate levels.
That's struck out.
That you've taken out.
That's struck out.
I thought we only struck out the first part of that.
We already owe the fund money that we haven't paid back.
But
We've
that
already
doesn't-
not budgeted to pay back the 4% that we don't have.
We have over 5% right now.
Well, but that's when you add up different funds and put them all together. You can take a fund and put it one place and add it up and it looks like 5. You can put it in another place and add it up and it looks like 5. But the fact of the matter is, if you take the budget number and you subtract the governmental funds that come in, you're at somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 million left. And then if you subtract the 4% from that, you're somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 in your account. So that's deficit spending, and you can't put that back. The only way you can put that back is to ask JFC to refund the money in the following year, and we haven't done that. We haven't done that in, 2-3 years. So we are still behind, and each town has its unfunded budget balance. Each town does. And Warren got a break somewhat because they could use their fund balance for their emergency. The town of Bristol made it very clear that we have a very healthy fund balance in Bristol. How are we supposed to make it very clear that we have a healthy fund balance at the school department level when we don't?
So Sarah, yeah, so I was just
Let's
gonna say,
just clarify before we
Sarah
continue.
mentioned that A should still be in the policy.
The final
Yeah,
sentence.
it got struck all the way through, but the should should still be in there.
Should the actual amount assigned for cash flow fall below the desired range, the school committee shall create a plan to restore the fund to the appropriate levels. And the other part that was missing from Jessica's comment was that there was a part 3 added that was new that says, the Bristol Warren School Committee will vote on all balance transfers. I think that's
actually more that the
Yeah,
school
I think
committee
it's
will vote
important
on.
not to omit that if we're talking about the school committee giving up power. We added something that says all balance transfers will be voted on by the school committee.
All
Sorry, the
balance
subcommittee.
transfers, all unassigned balance transfers, or all balance, is it all unassigned balance transfers? Or is it all?
What was wrong with what we
All
had?
balance transfers in the fund balance policy.
What's wrong with what we had?
It wasn't clear. I mean, there was a...
It was very clear.
Well,
It's been
the
clear for
professional
20 years.
auditor felt that we had 5.7% and we were meeting this policy, and you didn't, which shows that there was some problem with the language.
Right, that's why we changed it, because of the last.
I didn't have any
meeting.
problem with the language. I knew exactly what the language was.
Well, and our professional that we hired to look at our books disagreed with you. So
Our professional also had findings on us as well. We should not, what this says is that you can arbitrarily spend that money and then we'll vote on all balance transfers. Well, it already says that in here, that the school committee shall create a plan to restore the fund to the appropriate levels. It's already there.
And that's staying.
But in my copy, it's crossed out.
Yeah, that's what,
Well, when you,
That's what
I would really
was pointing
appreciate it
out.
if at some point we could get correct paper. Because this matters, because this is our savings account. This is our emergency funds. And you send me and the people in these towns, you send them this and it's wrong?
well, luckily it's first read, so we can go, we can
No,
send it
it's not
back.
luckily it's first read. I think this
Well, it's
policy
better
was
than it being
fine.
final read.
And we don't vote on all balance transfers. We never have voted on all balance
That's why
transfers.
I think that's why
But
they
it says we're
suggested adding it.
supposed to.
We just added.
No, that was added.
No, it says in here that we're supposed to have a plan to restore the fund to the appropriate levels. We don't have a plan.
Well, you are at the appropriate level. You only need to make a
No,
plan.
we're not at the appropriate level. It just looks good to sit in our operating fund budget. If you take the 4% out of the operating fund budget, you don't have much money in there because the rest of it is governmental funds. So you can do all you want and say all you want, but the fact of the matter is, this is our unassigned fund balance safety net that our towns have, and I'm sure towns across the state have, and I don't think we have any business changing it.
So I do believe the concern is that the reason that it was put into place is because at one point, we found ourselves not being able to pay our bills.
Well, we couldn't make payroll, but more to the point, we had a payroll problem this year, and that was one of the findings in the audit. And so you can't.
Mark,
well,
we didn't have a payroll finding. We didn't have a payroll. We're talking in public, and I don't want there to be.
That's exactly what she said, or he said in public
No,
that night.
The thing was the payroll bank statement reconciliation, because of the way that it was set up, and we've worked to change that this year, but it wasn't a payroll cash issue at all.
No, but for the last 20 years, we've had no findings. So now I'm trying to figure
No,
out.
we had the same finding the year before. That's been going on up
Now
until
I'm
the
trying to
annual.
find out where all this money is and why it isn't in appropriate categories. I understand why it's unassigned. It's unassigned because you don't know what the emergency is. And if you assign it to Colt Andrews and the emergency is at the high school, well, you can't use it because you've assigned it someplace else. So you leave it unassigned, but you don't eliminate it out of a policy. And you don't say, oh, we'll come to you every month when we do this.
Can I
So
just?
I'm trying to understand, is your concern execution of the policy or is it language of the policy? Because
It's
I think
both.
there are two. So let's stick to language of the policy just for the purposes of this conversation. I think all concerns need to be heard, but right now we're looking at the language of the policy, right? So now knowing that should the actual amount assigned for cash flow, that sentence stays in. And they added the clause, part 3, that says the Bristol Warren School Committee will vote on all balance transfers. Do those two facts change anybody's thoughts on the policy?
They don't change mine because the first part that you eliminated says that the Director of Administration and Finance shall report such amounts to the school committee as soon as practical after the end of the fiscal year. You're
So I
taking
guess
that out, so we're not getting
would
that
those-
report.
Reporting-wise, when would those reports be made?
If you look at number 1, it already says at the end of each fiscal year. We just took it out because it was redundant. We already report out on that at the end of every fiscal year.
So we would keep
We
our 2%.
actually in budget decided to report it twice, if you
Right,
remember. And
right, and-
So the policy says you only have to
In
report it at the
January-
end of the year, and we changed it in budget. That budget gets that report in January and June. So we've increased the amount of times that we're going to report it out.
So we'll still have the 2% for emergencies and 2% for unanticipated expenditures.
They're both for emergencies, so it's the 4%. That's
For-
what the auditor
so
was
you-
trying to say to us, there's 4% in unassigned balance. And previously, we talked about it as 2% for unanticipated and 2% for emergencies. But really, those two things are the same. Unanticipated and an emergency would be the same. And so the auditor said that was redundant language. The 4% covers you.
And so before it is used,
It
it
has
would
to
go
come
to,
here.
it would have, before the money was spent, it would have to be approved by the school committee.
Correct. If you remember, we had to do that with the track and field, the 72,000, even out of capital. We brought it to you first,
So,
and then we moved
so
it.
maybe there should be something in the, and I'm not sure if it's there or not, but maybe adding something to that, the Bristol Warren School Committee will vote on all balances to make it clear.
It's right there. The
Where?
Bristol Warren School Committee will vote on all balance transfers.
No, I mean, prior to the transfer.
So
Well, I
if
mean,
it,
but for instance, no, you're right, never mind. You're correct, yeah. But, all right, because my concern is cash flow, because that may become an actual issue for us with the town of Warren. So we're heading in that direction, so we need to make sure that we are replenishing that 4%, because we might be in a situation, it's very likely that we will need to use it.
And right now, we're at 5.3,
5.5.
5.5. So we're above our 4% right now. So we have 5.5%
Of unassigned,
of unassigned funds.
of
in that.
unassigned
Yep.
funds.
So the policy says 4, we have 5.5.
And we're going to leave in the line, potentially, once it goes back to policy, about restoring the fund, should it fall below the 4%.
So not unlike a lot of policies, we're not really changing anything, we're cleaning up,
The language.
Yeah.
and we're taking the 2 and the 2% out because of the confusion from the last meeting. Again, and it doesn't make any sense anyways, because it's just 4% for emergencies.
It doesn't say 4% here.
It
does. It does.
Five.
Right on number 5.
It says 4% of total general budget operating expenditures.
It says it right there. So can I,
We don't need to vote, it's a cleanup for next time, this is first reader.
great.
Yep, so we'll redraft it.
So those are the, let's just, just for clarity, to make sure that next time the document is clean, we're leaving in the sentence that said, should the actual amount assigned for cash flow fall below?
Do you want to vote on that change? Mary Ann, should we vote on a first read?
Okay.
You don't vote.
So if we could add that, make sure that that's added back in.
Yep.
I think that was that it?
Yep.
Okay.
I'd just like to say it's kind of like statistics, only it's word games. The fact of the matter is, this is a separate set amount that sits within the unfunded, unassigned fund balance. And to say that we have 5.5 of unassigned fund balance is in and of itself not exactly true, because 4% of that is there for policy. The rest of it is there because you're telling me that we have that much money left to spend in this fiscal year. So what you're doing is you're combining what we have in our fiscal year for operating money along with the 4%. And then you're saying, oh, by the way, if we take any of the 4%, we'll let you know.
We can't touch any of the
you know, there's just no way.
All in the unassigned.
No, at the end of the day, you can say, I need $1.5 million, and I'm going to take it out of the operating fund, and I'm not going to take it out of the 4%. Or you take it out and you don't tell me because you don't think you have to, and then when I come back and say, where is the 4%? This disappearing 4% that's been disappearing for like 5 years, everybody looks at me like they have a blank face, because it's arbitrary and capricious about where you take the money from. If it's all in one pot, it comes out of that pot. So who makes the decision that it comes out of the unfunded part of 4% or the pot that's left over of operating capital? I mean, you have now merged the two amounts. And that's just not acceptable. I understand that you're talking about cleaning up wording. I get all that stuff. But at the end of the day, our operating budget is one big pot if we pass this policy. And I can't accept that because I don't know where that money's going.
Because we used to have a capital account.
Correct.
And
We still have a capital account.
Nothing,
That's separate
no
from this.
accounts
No,
are
no,
changing
no, but I mean, the
by this.
unfunded, it was almost subcategories within the unfunded.
Unassigned?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
unassigned fund
Yeah,
balance.
unfunded, yeah. Unassigned.
So you have a capital fund balance separate from this.
So in the back of the audit,
Mary Ann?
So where it says, the Bristol, where you added, the Bristol Warren School Committee.
Number 3.
Will vote on all balance transfers with the understanding that the 4% cannot be touched unless it is an emergency.
Well, I wouldn't yell quite as loud, but I really think it should be its own separate fund.
Right, but in other words, you know, and.
It clarifies.
We talked about that at the last meeting where under unfunded balance, it could be A, you said about 5.5. So A, you've got 1.5 that you can spend, and B, you've got the 4% that can't be touched unless there's an emergency.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, but that's splitting it.
Right.
To just be clear, though, we can't touch any of it. We
No,
can't
no,
touch the
I
5.5.
understand you can't touch any
Okay.
of it, but the 4% is more untouchable than the rest. But if you broke it up like an A and a B, you told me we had to keep it under unfunded balance for the audit is for us.
Unassigned.
Everything.
Unassigned.
So
Yeah,
we call it
she's
A, we
using
call
my
it B.
language.
And then I just talked to Sarah, we add to that sentence, the Bristol Warren School Committee will vote on all balance transfers with the understanding that 4% cannot be touched unless there's an emergency.
I could live with that, yes, thank you.
You're saying the same thing and just making it.
Marge, I just wanted to reiterate, that's what we're trying to say.
Oh, I didn't,
We're not, and.
I've
can
just
I
been
ask-
frustrated, Sarah, because for 20 years, I knew where that money was all the time. It was always reported that way. It was exactly as Mary Ann described. It was under the fund balance, but it had its own separate line. And then all of a sudden it disappeared. And nobody seemed to know how much there was there. And that's been going on for a very long time. And I didn't understand why we didn't know where the money was in a fund that shouldn't have been touched. So my frustration is that we're still not addressing the issue, and the issue is that 4%.
So does Attorney Carroll's language make
Yes,
sense to
because
you?
it puts it on a separate line. So when you're reading the budget, you're seeing what's in the operating budget, and then you're seeing what's in the mandate for the 4% mandate on a separate line.
Okay.
So the policy is just going to have the addition that Sarah and I talked about. When you actually show the unfunded balance, there's going to be two subclasses.
Unassigned
sub A
fund balance.
And then sub B.
Is this what we're looking at?
I don't know if that's what you're looking
This is basically showing roughly $3 million labeled unassigned, and then the difference, a very small number, is total fund balance. And this came from the auditor, page 5.
So I think, again, I mean, Marge will differ on this, but I think it's just the way it's represented in the audit, it's GASB standards. We can put in those two sections under the unassigned fund balance to distinguish it.
Right, so that's the way you present it on a piece of paper, unfunded balance, A, B.
Yes, we could present that on budget, and we can also present that in the audit. It wouldn't be on every page, but it'd be on the page that they allow us to do
And
that.
the policy, simply, you can make the changes you made, as long as you leave to the actual vote, leave that sentence in and add a little bit more to number 3 that Sarah and I just talked about. I think it will cover what you need much.
It does. I want to be able at any given time to ask how much we have in our 4% now, not 2 plus 2, or what some people call it, and what I called it a long time ago. But I want to know that it's there, because I don't ever want to be in a position where we don't have enough money and we are skating on thin ice as it is. So, thank you. Yes, thanks very much,
perfect.
Sarah.
Thank you, policy. Next up, item G on the agenda.
I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for words here, because I came into this policy not going to the policy meeting, which I apologize, and thought that we were basically providing common language for us to all understand, because I think we had a disconnect. There was 2 plus 2, there was the 4, and now, like, I came in here thinking this was a positive thing. We were giving common language that we can all use as an organization so that we all understand the same thing, and now I'm more confused than I have been since. So if we're okay with it, I'm okay with it, I think, but if there's a time before the second vote and a budget subcommittee, and there's just a time to just really look at the graphs, look at the numbers, and make sure that we all understand the language to the numbers and the reporting, I think I would feel a lot more comfortable with that.
Can we request to put it on the agenda for the budget subcommittee?
And just the fact that we have such a huge disconnect right now from where I came in from and what our treasurer sent in a letter, I think it would be of value to hear her words from her so that we can fully understand what we meant, because I thought this was a positive, so. And maybe it is, and maybe we're there now, but I just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
Once again, this is only a first read.
Yeah.
And we've made a change, and then maybe if you, what you said, maybe it needs to just go back, instead of going back to policy, maybe the budget.
Go to budget,
subcommittee
yep.
would look at it, the change that I just recommended, and see if they're okay with it.
And I'm less about reviewing the policy, it's more of just applying the numbers.
Right.
So that we understand, and again, I thought this was a positive, because then we can take these numbers of fund balance, spend, and everything else, and then go back to the budget committee, which we've had continuous discussions on what are the numbers we should be reporting and when we should be reporting them. So hopefully, that's something that we can.
Maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should refer it back to the policy committee to refer it to the budget committee to come back to us.
Yep.
Well, budget will meet next before policy, so we can review it at budget and then bring it to the
What's
next
the
policy.
date of the next budget meeting?
I don't have it in front of me,
Okay.
but I'll have Amanda send it out, yeah. But we have one scheduled because our next meeting is May 13th. We have a budget before that.
So the plan is to send this to budget so that we have some sort of common understanding, to Adam's point, using the audit. So let's make the audit match the language in this policy, and then it will go back to policy before it comes to the full committee.
Sounds good.
That's a good plan.
That's fine for me, but I think what Sarah and Mary Ann worked out over there is probably a really good midway point.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to item G. Please, can I have a motion to accept policy JGG, contests for students for review? It's combining policies IGDH and IGDHR for a first read.
And if you'll, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's still a first read, you don't have to,
Oh, okay.
Oh,
first read.
Oh, yeah.
So you'll notice the language from the first policy stays exactly the same, but then because it was kind of repeated in the second one, the IGDHR, I just took the italicized paragraph, which was the only different information, and added that. So now we just took two policies and combined them into one. One was actually a policy, the other one was a reference, so it repeated much of the same information. So this is the combination, and the italics is the add-on. Any suggestions?
any discussion,
edits?
comments? Thank you. Next up, also for first read, is policy GBEBB, staff conduct with students for review. Any,
Excuse me, Madam Chairman, shouldn't we have voted on that?
It's a first read, Mary Ann, so you don't have to read on the
that's
first.
new. That's,
Yeah.
this is,
No, we always vote on first
We
read.
always voted on first read.
that's why I was asking for,
Then why didn't you just vote on this one?
Because you said not to.
you said not to.
No, the one before.
Yeah, you said not to.
Oh, all right, I'm sorry.
It's never,
We normally, yeah, we normally vote on first reads.
yeah, that was brand new. So can I have a motion to approve policy GBEBB, staff conduct with students for review, first read?
So moved.
Discussion.
So the only change to this is the addition of the word texting down in number 5. It originally had friending, following, or interacting, but now with the advent of texting, we included that word.
Any questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I apologize for not being at the policy meeting, so I couldn't discuss that then. What I don't see here, and maybe it was discussed, maybe if it wasn't, was a staff member, a student riding in the vehicle with a staff member. I don't know if that was discussed. Is that something we should discuss? I guess my opinion is that if we're going to really try to encompass staff conduct with students, I would think we would want to add it.
Madam Chair, I would agree with Adam, but I know that's also in another policy, and I
I
don't
was
know
going
if
to say,
it's
it's
been
not,
merged.
we don't allow that, it must be in
No.
a different policy?
We don't allow it, but I don't think that it's a bad idea to put it in this one as well.
If it's redundant, I'm fine, but
Well,
I
no, it
wasn't
doesn't hurt to
there.
reinforce.
Or find out which policy it's in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Okay, so we can look for that.
Find out what the policy is, and then depending on what else is in that policy, maybe we can combine.
Yes, combine or
Okay.
add. Yeah,
Thank you.
there's no harm in having it in multiple places.
Thank you.
Anything else? So can I have a motion to accept this policy for a first read with the change suggested by Mr. McGovern?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. I'm sorry, PMA and Perkins, we should have had this at the top of the agenda, right after your presentation. Item I, please can I have a motion for approval of RIDE Stage 3 scope and budget as recommended by the School Building Committee?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I have one discussion. I'm going to stay consistent. I don't think we should be moving forward. I think we should be putting this on hold for a minute. Warren's financial situation is very bad, and I don't think that this is fiscally responsible for the town of Warren or for the school district, because we still don't know what the implications are going to be for the school district. So I just want I want it in the public that I said it, because I still feel that things have changed dramatically. And so we may need to change this plan. So.
Anybody else?
No, I just agree with Sarah.
With,
Sarah.
oh, I thought you said Sarah. Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
I'm opposed.
Marge and Tara. Last thing, item J, can I have a motion for approval of the bid for the RFP for the open display merchandiser?
I have a question on that, if you don't mind. But I'll let somebody make it.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
This is a quote for stuff for food. It doesn't, this money come out of our,
Food program.
yes,
It does.
because I don't see that anywhere.
Was this bid on the MPA?
Yep, so this was, you approved this bid last time you approved the RFP. We had it out there. We only got one bidder, so that's why you only see one bidder on here, and this is for the food service account. So this will come out of the food service.
I just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
that's where it was coming from. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, before we do that, I would just like to say, most of you here, probably all of you here, don't realize it, but we lost a school committee member this week, Deborah Redmond, and she represented Bristol in the early 2000s. I worked with her on policy. She lives in Warren now, but I just like to recognize her service with our school committee, and going to miss her. And prayers for the family, for her two daughters. So thank you. Sorry.
No, thank you, Mrs. McBride, and obviously from the whole existing school committee, we would send our condolences to the family also. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.